Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today for our Small Business Development Workshop, a three-dimensional approach to small business branding. The Duluth Chamber is grateful to provide this offering free of charge to our chamber members because of the generosity of our sponsor, Lake Superior College. But without further ado, I have the absolute pleasure of introducing our speaker for today, Ashley Kimball. Ashley is the owner and creative director for her business, AKimball Creative. So what we know is strong branding can increase recognition of your business, foster trust, and amplify your voice, among other benefits, which I saw on your Facebook page, Ashley. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing with us how we can grow our business through creative and consistent branding practices. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, welcome everyone. So we're going to be going to the movies today. Who likes the movies? Quick show of hands. Yeah. So if you've seen a good movie lately, or you you want to shout out your favorite movie in the chat, go ahead and do so now. And if you've never used the chat before, it's just at the bottom, and it's there for you to use. So, I know my favorite movie is My Best Friend's Wedding. Has everybody seen that movie before? Yeah. Anyone else have a good movie they've seen recently, or a favorite movie they want to share?
I liked A Man Called Otto.
The Man Called Otto. I haven't seen that one. What's that about?
It's about a crabby old guy who befriends a neighbor and softens and becomes just a wonderful person.
Well, that's super cool. I'm gonna write that down because I want to watch that.
It's Tom Hanks.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Love that. So a couple quick housekeeping things before we dive in. La La Land, super good one. I love that one, by the way. I also haven't seen the menu, so I'm going to write that one down too. And a couple quick housekeeping keeping things. So we only have an hour together today. So I really encourage you to, put your phones away, try to focus as much as you can, and be ready to take notes and participate in the activities as you are able as well. If you have questions as we're going along, please put them. There is a Q&A little button as well, or you can put them in the chat. We'll keep tabs of those as well, and we'll go over those in the Q&A as well. And then just a little bit about me, so you have a little bit of background. Obviously, my name's Ashley Kimball. I went to Duluth Denfeld High School. I also coached there as well. And went to Scholastica as well. I have over 15 years of sales and marketing experience. And obviously, as Chris said, I own a creative agency that does branding for small businesses. So I'm super excited to be here. And the last housekeeping item is that we all need to kind of come to an agreement as to what a brand is, because we need to start on the same page, right? So go ahead and share in the chat real quick. What do you think a brand is? And I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that, and go ahead and put that in the chat. So what comes to mind when you think of a brand? Do you think of like a logo, or do you think of like social media and the colors that go along with social media? We got Michelle saying it's publicly identifies you and it's easily recognizable. Barb is saying recognizable vision, a theme for the business. And Imart, I just want to make sure I'm saying your name right. Hopefully I am. Is it Imart? Is that correct? I like to say people's names correctly, sorry. Company's identity, consistency, characteristics of the business, brand's organization or an individual outfacing personality, their tone, colors, fonts, etc. So I'm seeing a lot about consistency and how you visually represent yourself as a business or your business, right? If you have a team. And I want to kind of challenge that a little bit as well, because if you think about like the movies, right? And we're going to the movies. When you think about a movie that's just visual, right? We're back in the 1920s, right? With the moving pictures. And nowadays we have so much more technology available to us. We have so many more tools available to us that a brand is so much more than what it is visually, right? And so that's a little bit about what we're going to dive in today. But I really like the definition of, somebody said the representation of the business and what people think of it, something along those lines. Let's see. Yep. Lauren. I like Lauren's definition of brand as the identity of the business that you want customers to think of you as. So give me a quick thumbs up if you agree with that definition. Yeah. Awesome. So when we go to the movies, first of all, there's a couple things, a couple skills that we learn as we grow up going to the movies, right? And the first one is perception, right? And anybody remember those little like 3D glasses that we used to wear when we were kids as you went to the movies? They looked all dorky. They're like, woo, right? What was the very first thing you did with them? Once you looked through them like together, what was the next thing you did? Yeah, yep, like, oh, like what's it look like that? And then like close one eye, right? Ooh, what's it look like in the blue? Ooh, what's it look like over in the red, right? So it's looking at your business from a different perspective, right? So if we think of our business like a movie, we, every day we're like running around inside our businesses, doing the things that we do every day to make our businesses function, right? So when we're taking a step outside of the picture screen and we're working on the outside of our business and looking at it as a big picture, that's called strategy, right? So you're stepping outside of your movie screen and kind of putting your director's hat on. So a lot of what we're going to do today, we're going to have our director's hat on and we're going to have those little 3D glasses on. So to start off, kind of defining where we're going with this is when we look through those 3D glasses and we look through them together, we're looking at the whole picture to see like, oh, okay, like, is it 3D? Is it not? Like all that stuff, right? So that's your values and your mission, your value proposition and all that, right? And so we're going to dive into that. Then we're going to look at things through the blue side, right? And look at the voice of our business and the messaging side of it. And then after that, we're going to go over to the red side of our glasses, and we're going to look at things through the vibe side of it, right? So we have 3 V's. We have values, voice, and vibe. Those are our three V's that make a 3-dimensional brand. And then at the end, we're going to put it all together, okay? So to dive into the values piece of it, nowadays, you have like, 2-3 seconds to be able to make an impression on your customer, right? And so it's very important to be able to concisely say what your business does to your customers, right? And in a way that your customers understand it. So this is an activity that I do within my team multiple times a year, where we'll just go through and we'll clarify our value proposition. And so what a value proposition, it's a lot of times you'll see it as like I help XYZ do ABC and it provides these results, right? So go ahead and I want you to write it either in your notes or in the chat. What does your business do? What is the value proposition of your business? Who do you help? How do you help them? And what sort of transformation do they see from that? Give you about another 30 seconds there to brainstorm that and clarify that. Okay, and if you would like to share, you can go ahead and share in the chat. I see some people are already doing that, and I'm loving the answers there. So we create great tasting pizza in a fun environment. I think that gives you a pretty dang good idea of what their business does, right? We help social decision makers create engaging, fun times for their groups and parties. I like that. So, Lauren, what is a social decision maker? That is my one question there to clarify. That would be my question there, as far as keeping it as clear as possible. It's a person. Okay, love that. Awesome. So then the next step in really clarifying the values and defining those values is defining what you offer, right? So you're offering with what is your signature offer that your customers can take advantage of, right? And so that goes into building your value ladder and all those sorts of things. We don't have time to dig into that piece today. But if you have questions about that, I know we have several blog posts and things like that on that topic as well. And you can find those obviously on our website, akimballcreative.com. But really the heart of the values nowadays comes from the values that you and your business share that support your mission and your value proposition. Okay, so an example of this, we help small businesses with their branding, right? And so one of the values that we have that really supports that value proposition and that mission is that we value small and local businesses, right? And so when we're doing things like, workshops like this, right? We're celebrating when we make a small business purchase, things like that, that shares that we have that value and we're celebrating that value. The Harvard Business Review obviously does a lot of research, right? But one of their research found that 64% of consumers say they're more likely to make a purchase with a company that they have shared values with. 64% of people, right? So values is a huge part of your branding and communicating that to your ideal customers. And how do we do that, right? So that's when we start breaking it down and we break into the blue side of the lens and the red side of the lens, right? And so with the blue side of the lens, that's where we're talking about voice and messaging. And this is one of the pieces that I think of branding is most underrated. Because a lot of times you'll see things about like obviously clarifying your value proposition, things like that, right? And you'll see things about color psychology and visual aesthetics, but not many people talk about the voice and the messaging side of branding. So we'll go ahead and dive into that a bit. I like to start with brand personality on that. And the way I describe brand personality is you use your value proposition, your mission statement, and your values, and align that with the personality that fits your business. So everything is in alignment and is cohesive together. So if you're a lawyer that, is really focuses on trust and values, being the best in, what am I trying to say here? Sorry. Really values like authenticity and, the honest answer, right? You might not pick a super quirky brand personality that's going to be snarky, right? Because that's gonna cause some cognitive dissonance with your audience. So we want to make sure that the personality that you're choosing is in alignment with your business values as well. The other thing it needs to be in alignment with is your actual target audience, right? So you do need to clarify who your target audience is. So an easy way to do that is through a buyer persona. And what a buyer persona is it's just a kind of, you can use market research to be able to do it, but you create like an actual person, like a fake person, right? That is your target audience. So an example, if you are a yoga teacher, right, would be if you're teaching other yoga teachers, you would use the brand persona or the buyer persona of a yoga teacher. So what typically is a yoga teacher? They're, sorry to say, but they're typically female, right? They're typically, adults in their, 40s to, 30s, 40s, 50s, about that range, right? And so what does, a female in their 30s, 40s, 50s have? A lot of times they have a family. And so you build out what that person looks like so you can speak directly to that person. And then making sure that you harmonize your personality with that. So again, a lot of times you hear things about brand personality, but we're going to take it a step deeper. So this is where we bring in a term called a brand archetype. And the way I like to explain what a brand archetype is it creates the story, right? So who are you in the relationship of this movie, right? If you're like, your buyer is the main character in your movie, right? Who are you as the business in the movie script? So if your movie is Shrek, right? Are you Donkey? Okay. Or are you Shrek himself? Right? Because obviously Fiona's probably the main character as far as like she's the buyer, right? And who are you in relationship to her? So an example, I'll give you another example. Everybody here, have you seen The Karate Kid? Yeah? No? Okay. Karate Kid, I'm a millennial, so but the Karate Kid, basically this kid, he gets in a fight and he's like, man, I want to learn karate to be able to defend myself, right? So he meets this guy who kind of saves the day and helps him out, and he goes to him and he says, hey, I want you to teach me karate. The guy says no. Why does he say no? It's because he has values and he has the values of karate in him. And so he knows that the customer is coming to him from the wrong perspective. So why does that relate to my business? Most people that come to me for branding help, what do they say? I need a logo. Right? And so as Mr. Miyagi, right, my business, what do? We teach the customer that branding is more than just the logo, and we give them that holistic approach, right? So that really, having that story of Mr. Miyagi and Danielson really gives a really strong relationship as to what the storyline is for our business. And that does a couple things. First of all, it makes sure anybody I bring into my team has a very clear understanding of how our business talks to our customers, right? And what that relationship is. It also makes creating content and creating marketing materials a heck of a lot easier, right? Because we have that story already in place. And the other thing I would say is that it also gives the customer a clear expectation as well, right? If we're telling them that's the story, they have a great understanding of what it's like to work with us as well. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds here to because we didn't do this at the beginning, to kind of think about what movie your business would be. Or if you're in the marketing department, what movie would the company that you're working for, what movie would be represented by that? And who would be the characters, right? So are you Donkey, or are you Shrek? Or another example of this, if you're, are you in Mean Girls? Is Mean Girls your movie, right? Or maybe your movie is Hidden Figures, right? And it's super inspirational. So go ahead and take a minute, think about what your movie is. The Big Lebowski, I love it. Which characters are you? And go ahead and think about that relationship between you and your buyers as well. I'll give you about 1 minute to do that. So Eat, Pray, Love, are you Julia Roberts, or is your customer Julia Roberts and you're one of the characters that she encounters along the way that helps her see the world's a bigger place? Yep, I love that. Give me a quick nod, head, thumbs up if you feel pretty good about what your movie is and who you are in your movie. I love that so much. Lucy is such a great character. Lucy is so inquisitive and kind and thoughtful, and really is a good people person too. So I think that's a really great one as well. So now the next step is to not forget about this and put it to the side, right? So we need tools and systems in place to be able to utilize and leverage this, right? So this is where we use something called a messaging guide, okay? And you can it can look like whatever you want it to, right? You can have it in your Google Drive. You can have a folder in your computer. If your company uses Dropbox, you can have a folder in your company Dropbox or SharePoint, right? That kind of defines how you talk to customers, right? A good activity to do is it's an activity called Words We Like and Words We Don't Like. And a good example of this is I was working with a customer and she's a therapist, right? And so instead of using words like healthy and unhealthy, it was important that we're using words like functional and dysfunctional, because healthy and unhealthy carry shame, right? And so that was really important to the messaging and how they speak as a brand. So that's a good example of words we like and words we don't like, words we use as a business and words we steer away from as a business. So that's a really good document to have in your messaging guide as well. Other things that should be in your messaging guide are things like, owner bios, or, like things that you can use for press releases really easily. So you're not having to look them up every time you're trying to do something, right? So they're all in one place for you. Other things like your about page, services you offer, your value ladder, and having those things that you need to reference in one place together. And then the last thing that I would really encourage you to include in there is to include some of your best performing, like social media posts and marketing or ads. And this just gives you, it's a tool called a swipe file, right? So you have an internal swipe file of like inspiration of things that have really resonated with your buyer in the past. And so that way, if you're ever like, man, I'm really stuck and I don't know what to do, you can just go in there and say, hey, this really resonated. Maybe we can build off of that and do something here, right? So tools to help yourself not get stuck in place, right? On that note, 3 things that you should always put on a page so you're never looking at a blank page, just because I think this is super important. You should always, put, whenever you're creating something, you should always put who you're targeting. And this could be a segment of your target audience. It doesn't always have to be your whole target audience, right? Who you're targeting, what channel of communication you're using. So is it a social media post? Is it a tweet, right? I'm sure we all agree you can't fit a blog post on a tweet. Maybe with a thread, you might be able to make it there, but it's probably not going to be very great, right? So really being intentional with the channel that you're using. And then the third thing is, what is the intention of this piece of content? So, if it's a marketing piece, what's the next action? Where do you want this to go next? Right? So when you have those three things always on your page to start out with, you never have a blank page to stare at. So there's a little hack for you. And having those messaging, that messaging guide in place also helps support that as well, because you already have the storyline in place as well. So before we move on to the red lens with the vibe, does anybody have any questions or thoughts about kind of the voice side of things? You feel pretty good there? Awesome. And I'll throw out another tool there as well. I just said Google Drive. Another really great one is Trello, Notion, things like that are also really great, and they're free tools to use as well. I've also seen people just put print it off, and so they have it sitting on their desk too. If you're like, if it's not in front of my face, it doesn't exist kind of person, printing it off, there's nothing wrong with that, right? So having a binder playbook also works as well. If you are somebody who has a team, I will say it is super important to make sure that not only is it accessible to other departments and to the rest of your business, but also that they know the importance of it as well. So you may have to do a little bit of internal marketing as well. I wanted to share that as well. So as we move over into the red lens, so that's your vibe. So your vibe, V for vibe. And what is a vibe, right? Your aesthetic. So there's a couple things that go into that. Obviously, logo, right? That's the easiest one. And I want to remind you, as we talk about logo, that logo is a tool that you can use to increase brand recognition. It is not your entire brand, right? So a couple different types of logos. When you think about the psychology of what goes behind logos, I'm just going to go through this really quickly because I feel like most of you have a logo in place already, but it's kind of nice to know the psychology behind it as well. So there's pictorial logos. So if you think of like the little apple, right, that's a pictorial logo. And it utilizes iconography and symbolism to create an illustrative representation. So it's really great for stories that are very strong in their storytelling, right? Letter forms, so like a logo type, right? Stylizes a specific, font or acronym, and that represents the brand name. And it's ideal for brands that have long names. Sorry, letter form is like for us, AKC, right? So it's a shortened version. Then you have a logo type, which is the full name. And I apologize, I mixed those up there real quick. So a letter form, really great for long names, like example, AKimball Creative is really long to write out, right? So a lot of times we go by AKC. So that's an example of a letter form, or things that are really difficult to pronounce. It is another example. So word marks, letter marks, also called logo types, are used, like they're stylized lettering that can be used as a logo, and they're really great for businesses that print a lot. Right. So if you're like doing embroidery, things like that, that's a really great thing, or where it's metal, if you're printing on name tags. So it's easy to represent and make it look clean as well. Emblems, so like a badge or a seal, they're like a specific shape. They're really great for brands that want to add an official look. So a lot of times you'll see like universities, a lot of times will use like a badge or an emblem, right? Abstract is a unique to that specific business. It doesn't necessarily carry any like universal meaning or anything like that, but it creates a feeling. And that's really the strength of that. And so an example of an abstract would be the Nike swoosh. Right. Characters is the last one we'll talk about here, just as we're breezing through this. So like a mascot for a sports team, things like that. A really great example of a mascot logo is the Morton Salt Girl, right? Did you know she's over 100 years old? So it adds a lot of personality and fun, high energy to a business, right? From a branding perspective. So I just wanted to kind of go through those quick because we don't talk about the psychology behind that very often. And then within that goes the psychology of not just the colors that your business is using, but also the shapes. So if you think about a business that is very high energy, if they're using a lot of like organic, flowy, loosey-goosey shapes, right? Does that match what they're going for? Not quite, right? High energy, very dynamic. You're going to see things that have straight lines, that have dynamic shapes, and leveraging the shapes to create movement across the page and create that energy, right? And within shapes as well, thinking about the typography. So an example of this is like a flowy cursive font. You're not going to see very often with a lawyer's office, right? Because a lawyer's office typically holds the values of trust and authority and safety, right? And you can count on us. And a cursive flowy font gives you a lot of personality and relaxation and that sort of thing. So it doesn't necessarily resonate. So being intentional with that as well. So there are a couple different types of fonts. There's a serif font. So if you think of New York Times, right? And it has the little like squares at the ends of the letters. That's a serif. So a serif font conveys strength, authority, trust. And they're really great for if you want to convey a more formal tone as well. A sans serif fonts are really easy to read. So if you'll see a lot of fashion industry logos are switching from like calligraphic type logos to a sans serif font to be able to, one, modernize, but also to increase readability of it as well. So sans serif fonts are a bit more modern, and they're associated with the digital age as well. Again, script, we've already talked about, and the last kind of font to kind of consider is a display font. So when you think of a display font, have you ever seen like a fun like 70s font, right? Or like the fun like Western fonts? Those are all display fonts. So when you're thinking about which fonts to choose, think about if you were to creating a movie poster for your business, right? For your business as a movie, what would represent your business and the personality of your business? So that's the kind of thing you want to be thinking about when you're choosing fonts and when you're choosing shapes to use and things like that as well. And again, when you make these decisions, it's really important to create a document. So on the visual side of things, the document is called a style guide, and that guides your stylistic decisions. So as you make decisions for your business that align with your values and your voice, make sure that you are documenting them into a style guide. And a style guide, again, there's lots of templates out there, but it's whatever is going to work best for you and your business. So I want to make sure that that's really clear, because if you're not going to use it, then it's not useful, right? So make sure that you're creating tools and systems for yourself or for your department that are align with your working style and how you your workflows and all that sort of thing, so that you can incorporate it in your everyday use. And the last thing I want to talk about, well, there's two other things I want to talk about as far as vibe. The first one is making choices and being intentional with those choices about imagery, right? So do you want to use more like realistic, right? And a good way to think of this is to think of what style or what genre of movie you are, right? If you're a documentary, you're probably going to be more in like the photorealistic imagery, right? If you're a super fun, like cartoony kind of character and movie, you might be more on the like illustrative side of things, right? And the what's the word for the clip art? That's the word, right? You might be into like clip art if you're cartoon land, right? And so being intentional with that and documenting, hey, when we create marketing materials, this is our personality, and these are the types of images that resonate or align with what we do. And maybe it's pattern based, right? Or maybe you have a folder of these are the types of assets that we like to use. So that it's very easy to understand, okay, these are the types of photos we use, or these are the types of illustrations we use. And so being really intentional with that as well. And then the last part that I want to talk about as far as the vibe is nowadays, especially, a vibe is a whole experience, right? And so when we're talking about the vibe, we're not just talking about the visual side of things. Nowadays, you have audio, you have video, you have all sorts of different tools you can use to create that experience for your ideal buyers. So what types of audio does your business use? What types of video does your business use? And when I think of this, a really great example of this that really drives me nuts is, and you see it all the time on social media, is these like very holistic mommy brands that are, we're going to eat organic and share all these things. And then they put up a reel that has a whole bunch of swear words in it. Right. And it's like, we're all about the kids, blank, 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 blank. Right. And that does not align with the values of their business. Right. And so you're creating dissonance in your customers' minds. So being intentional with the types of audio and video that you're including in your business as well is super important in this day and age. So I would very much encourage you to include an additional section in your style guide that's a guide to how you use audio and video as well. So now we've kind of looked at everything as far as values, voice, and vibe, and the different components that you can leverage within your brand to be able to increase that recognition and increase the cohesiveness and the repetition to be able to really resonate with your ideal audience. So when we put it all together, we want to make sure that it resonates and it all makes sense together. Right. So it's important to zoom back out and look at that big picture again and really make sure that the whole picture of what you've created is holistic and cohesive. So as you're going through this and you're like, hey, I created these are the colors I want to use. These are all the things. And here's my messaging and everything. And then you come back and you realize there's something isn't matching. That's important to really look at and make sure that everything works together as well. So when do you know that something isn't cohesive? Well, if you look at something and you're like, wow, this is really high energy. And then you read it, and it's not high energy, right? And it's very thoughtful and kind and that sort of thing. There's where your dissonance is, right? So you want to make sure that everything's cohesive together as well. So with that, we have about 15 minutes left. So I do want to open it up for any questions, any thoughts, things like that. And Michelle, you have a really great point. I did mention the logo, but I did not mention the tagline. You are correct. A tagline is also very important, and it is a great tool that you can use to help increase that recognition as well. And I would say even that your tagline really is kind of like your logo is the tip for like your visual side of things. Your tagline really becomes the starting point for your messaging side of things, right? So everything kind of stems from that as well. So within that, your value proposition and your tagline should be very closely related to each other, right? That was a really great question. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see with a tagline is a lot of times with our messaging, it's really easy to use a metaphor to be able to create that storyline and make it really easy for your customer to understand what your business does. But be very, very careful about using too much of your metaphor in your tagline, because your tagline really is that super quick snapshot of like, this is what I do, right? Or this is what we do. Then you can start going into your metaphor and why and how and the impact that makes. So just be careful of how much you're using your metaphor, and especially in the tagline as well. Keeping your voice consistent across platforms and tactics, and across multi-people teams. Yes, that is a really great, so there's two pieces of that. So the first part is keeping your voice consistent across platforms. And this is really where that messaging guide really comes into play, being very clear on how you speak and why you speak the way that you do. That will really help you guide that as well. Because obviously when you're posting something on LinkedIn, it's a different writing style than when you're posting something on Twitter, right? But the writing style does not dictate the intention and the word choices that you choose to use, right? It dictates how you're writing it, but not actually why and the intention within the writing. I said that in a little bit weird of a way, but did everybody understand that? Yeah. Okay. Then the other part of that question was across multi-people teams. This is the biggest challenge for somebody that is within a business, right? That has multi-departments, things like that. What I will say is, first of all, so if you have like a SharePoint within your company, or Dropbox, or something that is like a shared asset zone, make sure that you have a folder in there that is about branding. So that if anybody's looking for, how do I do, like, where's the logo? Where's the like the email? Why am I not coming up with words here? Sorry, like the email signature and like things like that. They're all in the same place, but then also include the messaging guides in there as well. Then on top of that, you actually have to go a step further. So this is called internal communications or corporate communications. You also have to market that to your team and to the additional teams around you. So use your marketing skills that you have and turn it internally. That's going to be the biggest thing for you there. And a way to know how effective you're doing it is to do a survey. Like, hey, I just wanted to do a check-in and see how marketing's doing, and have some questions in there of like, do you know what colors we choose, what colors we use, and do you know how to access the logo and things like that in there. That will tell you if you've marketed internally enough as well. So any other questions or thoughts or anything like that?
I have a question for you, and it's kind of piggybacking off of Lauren's.
Yeah.
So let's say it's the same question about consistencies across platforms. If the chamber is posting like a business growth article that was in NPR or something on LinkedIn, like that's a really great platform for that. But then on Instagram, we're making this high energetic, like funky reel celebrating a new member of ours or ribbon cutting. Like, is that considered inconsistency, or is that just navigating the different audiences on each platform? Because they're very different audiences. So I want to make sure that we're being consistent and not confusing anyone, while also accommodating the people based upon the platform.
Yes. Yes. 100%. And what I would say there is with Instagram specifically is that reels are for reach, right? But then to follow up with it with a carousel or a static post that kind of gives you that deeper level of things. So then you're harmonizing that deeper level messaging still, but you're still honoring the platform and honoring the fun and the video side of it as well. And some of the best performing video content that I've encountered is really just sitting down and having like a heart-to-heart as a reel. Right. And so it can be something as simple as doing a reel of, hey, we just wanted to share, these are 5 values that we have within the chamber, and we're really, really excited to have our members here and appreciative and etc. And that kind of will also bring that harmony back as well, as far as honoring the fun and exciting, but then also still resonating with your values and your mission as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions at all? Any thoughts or anything that you maybe heard today that you hadn't thought of before, or anything like that? Any golden nuggets or things?
Lauren did ask a question that the messaging guide is tied to your brand personality. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I would definitely really closely have brand personality and your messaging to work together. And even the archetype as well, because again, storytelling is a very important piece of communicating what you do. And so leveraging your brand personality and your brand archetype to tell that story will help you with your messaging in general.
Perfect. Well, if I'm not seeing any additional questions or comments in the chat, let us go ahead and we can wrap this up since we are nearing noon. Thank you so much, Ashley. This was fantastic. Super engaging and lots of tactical advice. I took a ton of notes myself. And thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I hope you have a wonderful day. I will follow up with an email to this with the recording of the session in the event you wanted to rewatch it or share it with colleagues, as well as a couple additional pieces that Ashley will have to share. So thank you so much. Ashley, do you want to just hang around for an extra minute, see if anyone has any additional questions or comments?
Yes, definitely. And thank you guys for the positive feedback in the chat as well. I hope you guys found a lot of value in today.
Yeah, I think you did. Thank you, everyone.